All right. Good evening, everyone. So we continue where we stopped last week. Last week, we went over some of the best practices. We went over the history of data visualizations. And we also talked briefly about what this course is about. And we started with the Excel exercise. We didn't finish it. So today we are going to complete the Excel exercise because it has a lot of best practices that we can benefit from that exercise. And as they are also installing Tableau on those computers, hopefully they promise that they're gonna install Tableau in this computer lab tonight after this class. So hopefully by next week, we will have Tableau on all those computers and we can continue with our daily exercise or during the lecture in-class exercises on Tableau. So today I would like to go over the contrast and compare and contrast of data visualizations. And remember when we talked about one of the objectives of this class is to learn the best practices about data visualizations. What are the things that we need to do and what are those things that we need to have when it comes to data visualizations? So this is an example of a cupcake as a data visualization, which is a very bad data visualization. So in data visualization, you will hear a lot of jargon like VIS. VIS here is short for visualization. So that means graph or chart or visualization just in short. So this is a very bad, so when we use 3D, three-dimensional images or graphs, that's a very bad design. We should avoid using 2D, 3D, 4D, or whatever D, right? So we need just to stick to what is more presentable, what is really helping convey that message we want to do, right? So again, this is something that we should avoid to do, is the 3D. So this is an example of a website that used to collect data from individuals. So they would show them a picture and then they will tell them, can you tell us can you guess the height and the weight of the individual in this photo? And then they will plug in those numbers. Again, those the height and the weight. And the white dot is actually representing the actual height and weight of that individual that everybody was trying to guess. So this is a blog, and the person who was managing that blog is a prolific writer. She's very good writer. As you can see here, she has that data set. She said, I might as well create a graph based on that data set she has. And she came up with this data visualization. And what do you guys think about this data visualization? So
It's confusing.
confusing. It's bad. It's horrible, right? It's very bad.
It's kind of hard to tell what's going on.
Exactly.
I don't know, the colors are, there's like light and dark and then there's I don't know.
Beautiful point, very beautiful point. So all of you brought really excellent points. So the use of color here is so bad to the eyes. You know, we should avoid, when we talked about the colors in the reading, so we should avoid such bright colors that are harming our visions, right? And also, it doesn't have any title, tell us what's going on. It is using the Moray effect here. There is a lot of grid lines, and it is using 3D. And use of colors here for the labels is in dark on dark, so we can see it. And it doesn't have any purpose of those kind of this graph doesn't tell us what is its purpose. And what is really funny is also the use of the legends here. They provide us with colors, but they didn't tell us what those colors mean. What are they representing, right? So there is a lot of complications, and this graph is very bad design. And even the writer, the person, Miss Kate Harding, she admitted that She doesn't understand this graph herself, although she is the one who created it, right? So those are the things that we want to avoid when we are creating our own graph. So for such, two dimensions, so we have a height, which is continuous variable, and we have the weight, which is continuous variable. So a great representation for that would be a scatter plot. That way we can see the correlation, but there is, at least tells us to some extent, there is a correlation. So, although it can be better, but they also use this scatter plot where they ask individuals to put the pictures based on their height and weight. So at least this is kind of not bad, right? Showing pictures here, comparing people. So the next graph, I'd like you to see what do you think, what is wrong? What do you see? What is wrong with this graph?
The labels you have to label.
Excellent. So the label, remember when we talked about last week, when we were doing our Excel, we say, we don't want to, because that's the first thing people will do is to tell their head to try to read all of those labels, right? So that is very bad design for that, right? Other than that, I think that's the best way to fix it. Again, we need to know that, we can use column charts or bar charts as columns, vertical or horizontal, as we did last week when we did the Excel. We changed it from a bar chart to a column chart, or from column chart to a bar chart, so we can read it. So that's exactly what they did here to fix this graph, to make it more readable. Right? So the next, what do you guys think about this graph? It is using 3D, which is a very bad idea for so many reasons. 3D first takes a lot of ink, and we don't want to use too much ink in our visualizations. That's one thing. The other thing about 3D, 4D, or 3D is that it's very hard to compare accurately between those values in a bar. So the bars here, we can't accurately distinguish and compare them. So 3D should not be used at all. And again, they are using too much ink in the background. They are using, and you feel like those graphs are coming off at us, right? That's like, you hear of them or something, right? So they should be telling the story without too much bells and whistles that are distracting. Another example of 3D pie charts. Remember pie charts, we say we're not going to use them at all in this class, right? Unless you want to get bad grades, they use those pie charts, right? So I want you to read this one. So this is an individual. He wanted to show the financial revenue of Google in 2006 based on quarters before. And he said he's sick and tired of seeing tables and data in tables. So he promised, he's motivating himself to use visualizations to show that Google's financial data. And he said it's going to be much more, he meant exciting, right? They're going to be clear, they're going to be graphic. And he said he doesn't like Excel graphs, and he thinks it is worth the efforts to come up with such pretty graphs that he's going to show us in the next slide. So he's promising a lot, right? But the question is, do you agree with what you will see? So this is what he came up with. So do you agree that he's going to come up with that really exciting, pretty graphs? Right? So what do you guys think? Do you agree with that person?
Confusing.
So again, it's confusing, right?
Yeah, like I mean, the colors are very similar.
The colors are very similar. So which is which? It's really very hard. So the use of color is horrible. What else do you see? Something wrong with this graph?
the quarters are repeating every 4 quarters. So the quarter 1 to 4, and then there's another 1 to 4.
Excellent. So now we can see that those quarters are repeated. So what is this quarter for which year? What about this one? What about, so it is really confusing, right? In terms of quarters. What else is there one?
The numbering.
The data labels, yes. The data labels there on top of each other. We can read them. What else? Also, if you notice this,
Not consistent.
yeah, it's not consistent. So if you use decimal points here, you should also show it here in the label, in the data labels, right? So we should be consistent. Either use decimal or don't use decimals. Right? So those are really good points that you brought up. So now they try to make it even better. Good one.
There you go.
So it is even worse now. The data labels are on top of each other. Now we can't see anything. And the customers gain. They try to fix here that percentage. So they tried even to fix this one. Again, they tried to use the $1,000. They could have used millions or billions, right? Instead of 1,000 and 1,000. Again, the labels are on top of each other. So let's look at this graph. And I want you to look at it and tell me what's wrong. There is a major issue here in this graph. Mistake, major mistake. And this is a real graph that is coming from Fox News.
I feel like it's really hard to accurately pinpoint the 0.9 or the 0.8.
They look like 0.9 and 0.8 look very close to each other.
So 0.9 would be around here, right? Yeah, let's say this maybe.
You look at the 9.2 is very close to the 9.5.
You have a 1.9, 9.2 is very close to 9.5, you said? Yes.
Or that 8.6.
It's very confusing, right?
Yes. So there is a mistake. Can you pinpoint the mistake that they have done? So those are some great observations that they should keep in mind. They are too close, but there is a mistake that they have done. Take the 9 is this line. Right? So the 9 is approximately this line. Right? The 9 is here. So it is in this whole quarter or whole block. And this is 9. So the 8.
Yeah, the last 8.6 is in the 9.
Yes. So that's the mistake. So they put the 8.6 is almost in the same level with 9.4. Right? So imagine those are major corporations, Fox News, right? So they should do better than this. So this is even worse. SAS is a company, unfortunately, that provides analysis, data analysis. It's a major data analysis vendor, right? And visualization is one of their products that they provide to clients. Imagine they are doing such a graph. It is a very horrible graph because again, we say as a software that provides or a company that provides such software, you should always follow the best practices. And they did it. They are using the 3D and they even made it worse. They tried to curve it, right? to curve it, right? And so this is actually this graph, when it was published, a lot of gurus or data visualization gurus, including Mr. Stephen Few, remember Stephen Few that we talked about from the contemporary practitioners and authors about data visualizations. So we're going to talk a lot about him and his teacher, Tuft, So Few and Dutt. Few is the student of Professor Dutt. So Mr. Few, or Dr. Few, he actually wrote a blog essay about this graph, criticizing SAS. And he said it is like when someone is eating their own dog's food, right? So they are producing software, they should go better in producing such a graph. So when they saw that criticism throughout, SAS tried to fix it, and they fixed it. It's a little bit presentable now, right? And they fixed it and they tried to blame it on the marketing team. They said the marketing team, they didn't understand or they didn't know how to create it. So now we try to fix it. Okay? So there is a famous visualizations that we talked about when we were talking about the history, and we talked about Minrad. So Minard, Charles Minard, remember? And we saw also his graph, and we said we are going to talk about it later on. So today we're going to talk about more details about this graph. So what do you know about this graph? Have you seen this graph before or heard about it? So this graph, and then I would like to ask you also, what do you think about it? Do you like it, kind of at least from a quick vision, before I explain what it is about? So let me explain first what it is. So Charles Minard, he showed in a statistical visualization how what's his name? Napoleon actually campaigned to Russia, started, and how it ended. So we can see it when we move fast. The graph a little bit down. Check here. So what he did is he tried to show, and Dr. Taft, remember Taft? We said he's the teacher of you. He said this is the greatest statistical graph ever, right? He loved it. Why? Let's explain what it is. So this graph shows that when Napoleon started his campaign or his army from Lithuania, he started with 422 soldiers. So 422,000 soldiers started from Lithuania. And then and this is representing, the light color represents the number of troops, right? And how it started shrinking, and going through the cities on the way. So those are the names of the cities on the way until they arrived, and the number that arrived to Moscow was 100,000 out of those 422. So this is beautiful. And remember, this one was in 1845. So it was actually created, this graph, in 1845, 1869.
What is that graph called?
It is called the carte figurative. So you can call it the Napoleon Russia campaign, right? Napoleon Russia campaign. So when they arrived here, they were 100,000. So the black graph here is showing the retreat of the troops after they arrived to Moscow. They were 100,000, so they started retreating, and he wants to show here in the retreat the temperature of that particular period of time, right? So the temperature was at this here above zero, at least at that time, the metrics that we used, which is very close to Celsius. So they were fine until they reached this point, started to go below zero here, started to go down. So the numbers started to go down until he showed the rivers. So when the troops crossed the river, a lot of them died because of the cold weather. Because remember here, negative, in his studies it was negative something. Okay? So a lot of them, so that the size of the graph here going back went down. That means a lot of them died when they crossed the river because maybe they froze to death. And then here those guys, they come with those guys, so they combine, and they increase, and then when they cross this river again, was still below negative, freezing, they died, and then all the way, the last number of troops was 10,000 who came back from those 422,000. So what do you guys think now, knowing that background about this graph, knowing that it was this year of the time, what do you guys think about it?
Very deep.
Very detailed, beautiful. Do you agree with Todd that it is one of the greatest? Well, it is explained, right? So this is SAS, again, coming back to SAS. They created this graph, just came to show us that that's Lithuania, and then how they went all the way to Russia. So this is also SAS, showing us in a kind of in an interactive way how it started, going all the way to Russia. And then the retreat. Right? So again, he said, Napoleon said, he came to fight men, not nature. That's fine, right? So blaming that on nature. So this is another graph that built on what Nimrod did, right? So he showed even in a much better way. I like the title, Attrition of Napoleon Army. So it tells exactly what the story is in the graph. Tells the year when it was happened, by whom, by this guy based on Maynard. And then how it started, they started with 422 soldiers. And then it shows the decrease and the names of the cities, the dates, or the times and dates, right? All the way until they reached Moscow. So that was the date, September 14th, they were 100. And then the retreat started, starting to show the temperature of that time. And in Fahrenheit, that's even better, right? So he converted it to Fahrenheit all the way until they came back to them. And then he even went further and added more information that can help us. So how many were captured? Because that doesn't make sense. All of them just died because of, in the war. So how many were captured? 190, almost 45%. How many were killed in the battle? So almost 30%. And how many died of hunger, cold, and sickness? Okay, because of that river, remember? And we saw, and also he's showing into the rivers here. So this is one of the rivers. So those are some of the great graphical presentations. Again, Taft said this is the best statistical graph ever done. So you don't have to agree with him, but what do you guys think about this graph?
Is that what the software Tableau's named after?
Tableau, I think they used this one. Maybe they used it, yeah, that might be the reason, yeah. But what do you guys think about this? You don't have to agree with that. So what's your opinion about this graph? Do you agree that it is the best graphical graph, statistical graph ever done?
That's pretty good. It tells a story. That's the important part.
So it is detailed. So for us, because we want to know the story, it is helpful to us, right? So let's look at one of the critiques of one critique about this graph. And let's see what he said about it. So this is what he said. So this guy, he's a marketer. Said, Robin, He said, this is one of the worst graphs ever made, right? He said, Tuft is very happy because it shows 5 different pieces of information on 3 axes. And if you study it for 15 minutes, it really is worth 1,000 words. Right? So he is disagreeing that it is the best. And he thinks that it is good for those who want to spend 15 minutes to understand what it is, right? Again, he said, I don't think that's what graphs are for, so he disagrees that the graphs, they should not be that detailed. I think they try to make a point in 2 seconds for people who are too lazy to read the 40 words on Earth. So in other words, this tells us we need to know our audience. Who are we building this graph to? Are we giving it to the top executives? They don't have time for this, or to the operations, those people who are in the front lines? What do we try to convey in that graph? Do we want to educate people about what we want to show them? Or we just want to give them the scheme, right? Like the top, in a short note. So this guy is a marketer, he wants to get very quickly. So no wonder why he disagrees with that, because he's a marketer and he believes that this graph should be done instead of the previous one. So from his point of view as a marketer, they want to know, okay, 98% died, only 2% survived from that campaign. Okay? So you might be in one of those camps. You might like actually the details. You might like the brevity or the brief graph like this. So either way, do it. There is no restriction, right? What is best? So there is an assignment I'm going to assign to you maybe next week, not this week, coming week, the week after or so. It's called the Halloween. So in that Halloween, I want you to be open to imagination. Do whatever you want. Feel free to add some comments like the one that Menrad did when he added some comments explaining what this graph is about. He explained it on the top, and so feel free to do that. And we will look also at the example that we had. But coming back to what if you want to be detailed or you want to be brief, as long as you tell the story and it's up to your style that you prefer.